Russia is also facing rising tensions with one of its old allies, Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan is not satisfied with Russia's stance on the plane incident, so it is generally looking for reasons and using any opportunity to show that this conflict is not over.
Russia and Azerbaijan relations are going bad, and they're going bad very quickly. Putin is now moving troops to the Azerbaijani border, all the while Russian state media is blaming Azerbaijani special services for Operation Spiderweb. Yep, that operation where Ukraine destroyed 40 Russian jets and costed Russia $2 billion. The Russian state TV is saying that Azerbaijanis were involved in helping Ukraine. Here's the report, and then we'll get into why this is happening and why Putin is looking to start a second war.
According to our intelligence, Azerbaijani special services, using their diasporas in Russia, assisted Ukrainian special services in carrying out the sabotage terrorist Operation Spiderweb, which aimed to strike Russia's strategic air force. This was reported by the Telegram channel Notes of a Veteran, citing its sources in the intelligence. It was the Azerbaijani diaspora that helped organize logistics and cargo transportation, leveraging their business networks and the infrastructure of markets and warehouses. This is why Russian security services are currently carrying out operations to neutralize Azerbaijani diasporas, which, in the most literal sense, are acting as a network of Azerbaijani intelligence services, working in close cooperation with Ukrainian ones. An indirect confirmation of this is Azerbaijan's near-hysterical reaction to the recent purges of Azerbaijani diasporas in Russia.
So the question rises, why are Russians so mad at Azerbaijan? Well, they do have a big history, but at this point, they're mad because Azerbaijan is sending aid to Ukraine. But let me explain, because this is not the normal aid that you would imagine a country sending to Ukraine in the time of an invasion. You see, Azerbaijan has provided aid to Ukraine ever since this invasion started, and all the aid has been humanitarian supplies, energy support, and infrastructure reconstruction. No weapons, either defensive or offensive in any sense, that Azerbaijan has sent to Ukraine. But just last month, they sent something that pissed off Putin. So what did they send? They sent a demining machine. This machine is designed to clear mines in already liberated regions of Kherson and Kharkiv that Ukraine took back from Russia. But for some reason, Russians are really mad about this, even though Ukraine cannot use this machine to take down Russian drones or Russian missiles, and they cannot, of course, use it offensively in any sense. But to Russia, this is a big no-no, and that's because it's not just about the machine or the humanitarian aid that Azerbaijan is sending to Ukraine. It's about something much bigger than that. Azerbaijan is finally standing up to Russian bullying, and that's something Putin and Russian propagandists just cannot accept. They still see Azerbaijan, much like Ukraine, as a Soviet-era state that is not really independent. These states only have their independence if they stay within the Russian sphere of influence. If they want to be independent, well, the same playbook is getting launched again. Russian media is calling Azerbaijan a fake country, all the while Russian troops are moving into position on the Azerbaijani borders. Now, as you guys know, talking about war is always a risky move on YouTube because it's not advertiser friendly, so YouTube has a habit of restricting our videos. That's why if you can help us out by hitting the like and subscribe button down below, it truly does make a difference.
Why are we surprised by Ukraine's behavior? Because there is no such country, no such state, no history of Ukraine. There is no such state entity. This also applies to other new states, like Azerbaijan and such quasi-states.
You see, statements like these are why Azerbaijani officials and Azerbaijani citizens are siding with Ukraine. And it's just laughable that Putin doesn't realize this. Because more Russia tries to be the big strongman of the region, the more it's pushing away its own allies, and more it's helping Ukraine and hurting Russian soldiers on the front line. This is what the Azeri president just said yesterday. As NATO promises 5% defense spending, companies are moving fast to build their country's defenses. However, investing is hard. So why not let AI lend a hand? Candlestick uses AI to automate investing for beginners in the stock market. For years, hedge funds and big Wall Street players have used similar technology to give themselves a financial advantage. Now, for the first time ever, AI can balance the playing field. Candlestick AI integrates financial data, market news, and technical information to identify investment opportunities that human investors might miss. Getting started takes less than 10 minutes for customers in the United States. Download the app, tell Candlestick your investment preference, and you'll get a tailored AI portfolio that fits your needs. Then your AI advisor automatically handles the rest, buying, selling, and optimizing your strategies. You can sit back, relax, and see your money go to work or dive deeper. With each decision, your AI advisor gives you a custom-generated interactive investment report so you can understand the reasons why the stock was chosen. Either way, there are absolutely no account minimums whatsoever. So whether you have a few $100, a few $1,000 or more, you can start using AI to make smarter decisions and better manage your wealth.
I once had an opportunity to answer the question of a representative of Ukraine at one of the events a few years ago, and the question was about the same, and my answer will not differ from what I said then. And I think that it is consistent with the desire of the Ukrainian people never to agree to the occupation. This is the main advice. This is what we did.
You see, ever since the start of the war, Azerbaijan was pretty neutral. They weren't pro-Russia, but they weren't really pro-Ukraine either. But things started unraveling in December 2024. So, what happened in December 2024? As many of you guys may already know, a Russian missile brought down an Azerbaijani passenger plane. Just so we're clear, this was not a military plane. It was full of civilians, families, workers, and dozens of people were killed. Now, this situation was bad enough. Azerbaijan was pissed. But what made it worse was the Russian response. You see, instead of a real apology, Moscow just brushed it off as a mistake and moved on. For Azerbaijani, this wasn't just careless, it was insulting. People flooded the streets in protest. They were angry, not just at the attack, but at how little their lives seemed to matter to Russia. Even the government did not stay quiet. It grounded Russian aircrafts, canceled trade deals worth millions, and publicly condemned Moscow. Now, to me at least, the Azerbaijani demands were pretty simple, and maybe I'm biased here because I've been reporting on so much Putin knows, so I'll show you guys what they were demanding, and you let me know in the comments, is this something out of the ordinary? Azerbaijani demanded 3 things. Admit this accident as a guilt. Punish those who shut down the Azerbaijani plane, and pay to the families of the victims and the airline for the loss of the plane. Personally speaking, this seems pretty reasonable. In fact, this may be very convenient for Russia to do and just keep an ally. But for some reason or another, Putin does not want to do this, and the relationship has been going downhill ever since this. Here's what I mean by this. Just months after the trade deals were cancelled over the plane being taken down, Russian officials raided a neighborhood where Azerbaijani migrant workers lived. There, they arrested 2 brothers in relationship to a murder charge. Now, this is not the problematic part. The problematic part came next. You see, in custody, these brothers were beaten so badly that they succumbed to their injuries, and Russian officials blamed their death on heart attack. Again, the Azerbaijani officials believed that this was not an accident, but rather a message. They saw it as targeted abuse. The public in Azerbaijan was outraged. The protests broke out again in Baku, and this time, government took even stronger action. Russian media outlets were shut down. Even journalists linked to Moscow were arrested in Azerbaijan. And during the investigation, Baku officials found that Kremlin was using the Sputnik office in Baku as a hub for Russian FSB. On top of all this, Azerbaijan did something that no other post-Soviet country has done. It started prosecuting its own citizens for joining Wagner. All the while, any Azeri citizens who are fighting for Ukraine are perfectly fine, but it's now illegal for Azerbaijani citizens to fight for Russia or fight for Wagner, which is of course a private military out of Russia. Then yesterday, we had Azerbaijani president publicly announce that they will be preparing an international court case against Russia for taking down the Azerbaijani aircraft. Now let's get into the statement by Azerbaijani president.
On relations with Russia, the question was about the plane crash. Unfortunately, we didn't get any answer from Russian officials about that, though it's already 7 months have passed. For us, everything is clear. We know what happened, and we can prove it. And we know that Russian officials knows what happened. And it's a question why they do not just do what any neighbor would have done. Our requests for demands are absolutely natural. To admit this accident as their guilt, to punish those who shut down our plane, and to pay compensation to the families of victims, to those who've been wounded, and to Azov to compensate their loss of plane. We know what happened. Plus, the airspace of Russia was not shut down. Airspace was shut down several minutes after the plane was hit. And this also is a responsibility of those who didn't announce this covert operation which closes. So all that is clear as today's sky. But for 7 months we have no answer. Our general prosecutor regularly sends a letter to the head of Russian investigation committee, but all the letters answer that investigation continues. So we will wait when the investigation ends, but I think that it is counterproductive to behave like that. It will not lead that we forget it. We will not forget it. We are now preparing, and we inform the Russian side that we are preparing the portfolio to apply to international judicial system with respect to that. We know that it may take time. Malaysia and Boeing, it took more than 10 years. So we will wait for 10 years, but the justice must be achieved.
And this is exactly why Putin is moving some troops to the Azerbaijani border and even moving more troops to the Russian base in Armenia. Putin wants to put more pressure on Azerbaijan by putting troops on its borders. But in reality, Putin doesn't have the resources to start another front, especially considering how things are going for Russia in Ukraine. We are witnessing several rather strong statements by Azerbaijani leader directed at Russia and Putin personally. These statements were made against the backdrop of a sharp conflict between Moscow and Baku, linked to the persecution of ethnic Azerbaijanis and Russian citizens of Azerbaijani origin, as well as citizens of Azerbaijan itself by Russian security forces. It is especially important to observe how Kremlin will respond to these statements by the president of Azerbaijan, which clearly reflects a further deterioration in Azerbaijani-Russian relations and the diminishing of Russian influence in the Caucasus. Following the return of Karabakh to Azerbaijani control, Azerbaijan has been expanding its influence both in the Caucasus and in the broader region that includes the former Soviet Republic of Central Asia. Its main ally is Turkey, along with other forces interested in reducing Russian influence in the region. The Kremlin realizes that it's not just Azerbaijan trying to break free from Moscow, it's Armenia as well. Today, all of Russian resources are tied up in its war against Ukraine. The Russians quite literally lack the means to carry out aggressive actions against other former Soviet republics. Therefore, this is a perfect time and opportunity to move out from under the Russian influence, and Ukraine's heroic struggle against the Russian Empire is directly connected to creating that opportunity. One of the key points of contention is Azerbaijan's ambition to become a central hub for energy exports from Central Asia to West. bypassing Russia. This is something Russia strongly opposes. At present, Russia is unable to manage regional affairs through its so-called peacekeepers, as many of them are now deployed in Ukraine. As a result, Putin is likely to rely more on propaganda and will probably escalate the persecution of Azerbaijanis within Russia. Russian propagandists have already started making demand. Halt the export of agricultural products from Azerbaijan. Prepare for an imminent military conflict. Strike the center of Baku with Oreshnik. However, all of this is currently just informational noise. Russia lacks meaningful economic and military leverage to influence Azerbaijan's position. Putin fully understands that escalating conflict with Azerbaijan could also lead to a serious confrontation with Ankara and Azerbaijan's ally, Turkish President Erdogan. In fact, the Russian propagandists have already found a new enemy because this is what they're saying about Azerbaijan. Let's listen in.
With all due respect to Azerbaijan, its history and traditions, if Russia raises an eyebrow for a second, we are Azerbaijan's third trading partner, and I would like to remind you of the amount of money that is transferred from Russia to Azerbaijan, and not from Azerbaijan to Russia. And then, apparently, the situation may change dramatically. Is this what they are counting on? Or, considering the 300 kilometers of border, and reading what they allow themselves to say, and watching what they allow themselves to say on central television, do you want to fight? I am sure that no one in their right mind and sober memory living in Azerbaijan would resort to such stupidity.